This is good. Rock throwing was a real knightly skill.
Hi there, my name's David Rawlings. I'm the Master of Arms at the London Longsword Academy, which basically means I teach people to stab each other for money.
I'm Toby Capwell. I'm a curator of arms and armor at the Wallace Collection in central London. I'm also a practitioner of the European historical martial arts.
Today we're going to look at duels in movie and in TV, and we're going to see how realistic they are.
This film is portraying a highly fictionalized version of a real historical event. A trial by combat, or a judicial duel, is a legal procedure to settle some kind of dispute.
This is a legal standing.
It's an appeal to the direct intervention of God. This is really a medieval phenomenon, although there's stories of one-on-one combats throughout history. That's one of the only things that we know for a fact happened. Jean de Carouge was stabbed somewhere in the thigh. A good martial artist will know that that's a good place to stab someone. You can bleed out very quickly with a wound like that and let them bleed for a while. The armor is clunkier and more cumbersome looking than it should be.
The whole general feel of the fight is overall, it's too big, too clunky. There's a lot of swinging where there should be a lot of refined jamming it into, finding the little gaps, forcing always constantly them to defend the point as you're going back. And this is one of the things you see a lot in the Unterhalten sections in German treaties. This idea of wrestling your opponent first of all to the ground. Once they're on the ground, you work your way up them. You fall with your knee between their legs.
A lot of times when there's rolling around on the ground in film fights, the other opponent will then just jump sort of belly flop style straight onto him, which doesn't achieve much. But here you've got a very intentional crouch binding the fallen enemy's limbs. I guess when a lot of people think of a knightly dagger, they think of a knife that looks a bit like a sword. Cross-hilted cruciform daggers like this were a thing. It can be used blade up, it can be used blade down, for stabbing action, whatever. But actually they're not. The much more typical knightly dagger for armored combat are daggers like the one we see in the clip, the so-called rondel dagger, which instead of a crossguard, it's got two circular plates. It's not really a weapon that's effectively used to extend the reach of the arm. It's really all about this. And in the clip here, you actually see Matt Damon getting in and leaning on it.
But you do still see it quite a lot used like so. And again, it's all about the utility that you get out of it. You can put your weight on this, absolutely valid. For me, it's more about the spacing. So this gives you much more protection than this, particularly if you're in a position exactly as Toby said, like so, you're preventing somebody from stabbing up into your hands. In the German treaties that we study, we call this the Wrath position or the Wrath strike.
When we think about knights and formal dueling, there's a question of manners, politeness. Fights to the death aren't clean, and the dirtiness of it perfectly plausible. 6 out of 10. It's got some good references in it, but with this production crew at this level of budget, it could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I'm going to say a 5-6 as well.
It's not anything like the typical Hollywood lance exchange. Normally they'll charge each other 1, 2, 3 times and someone falls off. And it's really kind of formulaic and boring and predictable. Here, they go on the first charge and they both blast each other out. You can see real impact. You see the guy's lance get banged out the back of him. Nearly hits one of the extras on the side there almost. And the falls are pretty brutal too. These giant maces, which as far as I am aware are not a weapon that ever existed. There are two-handed maces, but with these giant oversized heads. They've basically taken a short mace and then just enlarged it to mythic proportions. Because there is a long tradition in judicial combats of using unusual, weird weapons just for the trial by combat that are not like the normal weapons that you would use on the battlefield.
I'd like to see people in kind of like a lower guard without just swinging the thing around the head. Swinging the thing around your head is not a good use of energy at all. It's a waste of your time. It's this sort of like the big barreling, we're going to run in and do big moves, when your moves want to be concise about controlling your space, particularly when you're using something which is primarily a thrusting weapon. The thing that makes me giggle about it, but I do like it, is the way that whenever there's a swing at somebody, they kind of try and skip out the way. On one level it looks comedic, on the other level, well, you don't want to get hit by something really heavy, so you might well skip out the way.
Hollywood people are forever trying to get rid of their actors' helmets as quickly as possible. There are plausible ways of getting rid of a helmet if you bother to think about it. He's having a hard time breathing, he's probably overheating, and he just panics and loses the helmet. That's a storytelling device that I can get my hands on. And actually, I've suffered from near heat stroke fighting in armor in California. And taking your helmet off might seem like a bad idea, but it's about practicality. You might get hit in the head, but you're definitely going to lose if you fall on the floor.
The Queen is innocent!
Here, Gawain rescinds his accusation of adultery. There is a real precedent for someone who's been defeated in a judicial duel and is about to be dispatched can make an admission that they were wrong.
I'm going to have to give it another 5.
I'll give it a 6 because it's got a legitimate helmet removal. Actually fight judicial duels, especially in Germany. Women, historically weren't knights. That's a fantasy element here. But they did fight judicial duels. And later they fought civilian duels as well, particularly in the 17th and 18th.
God.
I like this because knights often did fight formal combats for other reasons beyond the legal procedure of a judicial duel. Sometimes they fought what were called deeds of arms, which were these kind of exhibition fights, a lot like this. And it's just about the prestige and the fame, the celebrity aspects of knighthood, which is something Game of Thrones does really well.
Today is not the day I die.
Both sides in this judicial procedure are fighting with champions, professional fighters who volunteered to act on their behalf. And that is absolutely a real thing.
It's almost very much like having your own lawyer. This person will come and fight for you.
I'm not sure quite this much exhibition jumping about is a good idea here. I'm a bit wary of anything that might give your opponent information about how you move and what you're capable of.
I think it's potentially a good way of releasing your own adrenaline. If you stand there and you're very sort of like stoic and you're kind of then all of that adrenaline is coursing through your system and it makes your reactions very, very jumpy. So it's almost like this feeling of freeing up your limbs ready mainly, which is very, very good. There's not very much of this just direct threat, changing through from side to side to side. There is an awful lot of movement around the opponent. Cavendish talk about getting behind your opponent. Marozzo talks about walking to their shoulders.
Like a modern fencing match, just up and down.
With very few exceptions, you're categorically trying to get the best, most advantageous position that takes your opponent's arms out of their natural position of strength. The way that we portray people who are incredibly large in general forms of fiction is massively fiction. That person who is immensely strong has to be for some reason uneducated and unable to move. And this is not true. You get some absolute premium, huge athletes
who move fast.
Who are nimble, yes, terrifyingly fast, and are intelligent and use that to their own advantage. It would be nice really to see a fight that represents that. Not only is this person huge, but they have studied their art.
Oh no, you can't die yet. You haven't confessed. Say it!
He clearly has made a mistake with all this gloating. You've got to keep your emotions under control. You've got to stop with the pride and the celebration prematurely. A nightly kind of mental preparation is about keeping a very even kind of dispassionate mindset.
I'm gonna go for a 7.5. I really, really like the way the spear moves. I hate the way the sword moves.
I'd be willing to give it a 6.
How many more must die for the throne?
Just
one.
I think you can always look at this as just being what are your physical attributes and your training relative to those of your opponent. If your endurance is good and you're older, or if your endurance is good and you're younger and you spend more time as a younger person fighting, it's more likely to go to the person with the best combination of attributes in effect.
But the mental aspect is important too. Older fighters often have a mental advantage because they're better at keeping their cool. The bigger, stronger, more experienced guy is going to have an advantage.
It's kind of that point of where are you on the curve? How many injuries have you taken? How does that affect your performance?
Sure.
Where's the probing of it? It's always, I'll step in and then I'll hit. And that's a sure way for somebody to have the right time to do something.
There's too much rolling around now.
There's reference in a knife fighting manual to basically effectively faking a trip. So you fall over and then you roll past your opponent, got caught by somebody in a sword and buckler fight because they come towards you, they trip over their own leg and you go, ha! And they roll behind you and they cut the back of your leg, literally rolling along the floor. So there's certainly places for it. Making it the predominance of a fight scene, I think, is very, very, very flawed.
Does His Highness need a respite? 5 minutes?
The whole thing of taking a break in the middle of a trial by battle, it's unusual and probably normally not allowed, but there is some historical precedent for it. There was a famous deed of arms called the Battle of the 30 in 1351 in Brittany between two groups of Breton knights. They fought very hard for quite a long time, and then they did agree to take a break. They were exhausted, but yet they hadn't achieved a resolution. So it's not totally without precedent.
I think it's going to be another 5-6 just because there's so much rolling, and I appreciate that the armor is nice.
The younger guy especially could have used more training, I think. I'm going to say 5 on that one.
I come from a planet where we have no understanding of reach or measure.
A lot of people have criticized this scene for the slowness of the dinosaur guy's actions, but that actually relates very well to what it feels like when you're fighting in armor. You can feel as though you're moving really dynamically, and all these amazing things are happening. And then you see the camera footage of the fight, and it's just like, There's a Castilian knight named Luis Zapata who wrote a book on knightly combat at the end of the 16th century. He says specifically, when you're in full plate armor, you must make an extra effort to move dynamically with intention. And he says specifically, so that you don't look stiff as a statue. You have to make that extra effort to get out of the kind of Gorn effect.
We get accidentally into another piece of knightly combat, or knightly health and fitness, if you like.
Right.
This is like, what have I got to hit him with?
I mean, element of surprise and moving spontaneously and getting ahead of your opponent is obviously very important. There's not a lot of that going on here. This is good. Rock throwing was a real knightly skill. Numerous knightly treatises talk specifically about the correct techniques for throwing small, medium, and large rocks appropriately. Not perhaps that large. The Gorn, as a sort of reptilian humanoid, I think he's being sold to us as a creature that has a very thick hide.
I just like the idea he's on his way to a cocktail party and he's been accosted by Kirk.
Absolutely 10.
Is there a 12 button?
Yeah, 12. It's a form of punishment meted out on prisoners, making them fight to the death. You know, normally I would say, what's with the whips? The whip is not a weapon. But the whip is also an implement for corporal punishment, again on prisoners. So it's kind of consistent with, again, the circumstances in the story.
So it's more just making two prisoners fight for your entertainment rather than any of them having any particular standing in your
and
life.
fight with implements that are used to mete out corporal punishment. For that kind of mannered behavior, You probably would need to go forward to the 17th or 18th century. In civilian duels, you might see very cordial, formal politeness occurring right before they stab each other to death. Here it's quite a theatrical thing where they're just emphasizing that Flash is a good guy and the prince is just being a bit of a dick. These are modern conceptions of shaking hands and things. There is a tradition of sort of theatrical fights occurring in weird places. I don't think traps were ever a thing because really they're gonna ruin the quality of your fight. I mean, even like in gladiatorial combat in ancient Rome, they're concerned about the quality of the fighting. And if you've got people tripping and falling over and accidentally spiking themselves, it kind of ruins the spectacle. The footing is a problem. In a lot of medieval combats that I've been involved in, you're wearing smooth-soled leather shoes a lot of the time. And depending on what surface you're standing on, the footing can be a real problem.
Take my hand! Come on! You've won! Let him go!
It's not how this works. If the opponent is defeated but not killed, the officers of the court take him out and hang him anyway, because you have to have that resolution. The fight has proven that if he is the accuser, then he has bared false witness, and if he's the accused, then he's guilty. Either way, he has to die.
Historically, in judicial duels, is the penalty usually death regardless, or can it be a lesser thing?
For the loser, in the high and late Middle Ages, the loser dies one way or another. By that point, we're dealing with judicial combats that are fought largely for very, very serious offenses like murder or rape. In the earlier Middle Ages, when they're fighting about land ownership, they don't need to kill. One person can just say, okay, the land's yours, I give up. I'll give it a 7. It just does what it wants to do, and it's outrageous and camp.
For the accuracy of portraying birdmen, I'm giving it a 10. Does anyone ever use a flail on horseback?
It's not a good idea.
Okay.
Flails are massively overemphasized. And when they are used historically, they're used on foot. So that's the one kind of letdown in this scene. All this mounted combat is great. I'm glad they're using rubber weapons because they hit the horses a couple of times, but that probably would happen, and there's a reality to it.
The simplicity of this fight scene is that they're trying to hit the person in general where the shield is not, and they're just looking for every single gap. If the shield's going up, you're cracking him underneath. The
whole thing of where they're fighting with different weapons is something of a problem. A judicial duel properly has to occur on equal terms. So the weapons have got to be the same, one way or another. You can't choose whatever you want to fight with. That's a kind of old Hollywood trope that's appeared in several films. It has to be fairness.
You do see mismatch, though. You get somebody who's got a spear, somebody who's got a sword.
In Talhofer, some of the mismatched weapons is about trying to address other physical inequalities. Here, you've got a proper duel of chivalry set in 1194, really the high point of judicial dueling. 2 knights, evenly matched, should be fighting with the same set of weapons. Yes. This is set in 1194. The equipment that they're wearing is more typical of the early to mid 13th century. They're a generation or so out, but that's really starting to get picky. Overall, this is a really great sequence.
There's manipulation of the horses against each other for advantage. There's navigation around the shields. So that, for me, is a good solid 8, I reckon.
I'd rather they charged with the lance first and then progressed with other weapons. But there's real mail. I give it a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching.
And if you enjoyed this, you might like these ones.